You won't believe what happened after my last class of the semester. I thought it would be just another lecture. Pack up, head home. But when my student asked to stay behind, I never imagined the confession he'd made. It wasn't just what he said. It was the way he looked at me when he said it. I've been teaching for over 3 decades, but nothing prepared me for that moment. Before I begin, tell me from which of these are you watching? I always love hearing where you're tuning in from. Let me take you back to that day. It was Stella's Thursday of the term, and campus was unusually quiet. Most students were already mentally checked out, eager to rush off into summer break. I had just wrapped up my final lecture of the semester, comparative literature with a bit of old world philosophy woven in. The kind of subject that makes the more mature students lean forward and the younger ones squirm. I liked that tension dot at 63. I've gotten good at reading a room. I can tell who's there to coast, who's genuinely interested, and who's trying to figure themselves out through every book we read. William was the last kind. Curious, quiet, but with something simmering beneath the surface. He never interrupted, but he never looked away either. Always front row, always a little too intense for a 20-some that day. When the class ended and thistle of backpacks and scraping chairs filled the room, William stayed seated. I noticed it right away. I always notice. I was gathering my books, slipping my glasses into my purse, and when I looked up, there he was, still sitting there, his eyes fixed on the desk in front of him. "William," I said gently, not wanting to startle him. He looked up quickly as if he'd just woken from a trance. "Professor Barbara, do you have a moment?" There was something tentative in his voice, not nervous, but careful. "Measured. Of course," I replied, a little more curious than I let on. "Is everything all right?" He hesitated, then nodded. I've been meaning to talk to you. I didn't want to do it during class. We were alone now. The classroom had emptied out. The hallway outside was skied. The hum of the old overhead lights gave the room a soft, buzzing stillness. I motioned to the chair beside my desk. "Go ahead," I said. "Take your time." Hess stood up instead of sitting, walking to the window, then back again. His movements were full of energy he didn't know what to do with. "I know this is probably unprofessional," he started. "And you don't mean any disrespect, but I've been thinking about this for weeks, months, really." I sat still, watching him carefully. My heart beat a little faster, not out of fear, but out of a strange awareness that something in the air had shifted. It wasn't just a student-professor conversion anymore. There was more. He finally stopped pacing and looked directly at me. His eyes were darker than usual. Or maybe it was just the shadow of the afternoon light coming in through the blinds. "You probably don't remember the first time we spoke." Hess said it was after the lecture on the age of innocence. "You told me I have an old towel." I did remember. I remembered the slight smirk on his face when I said it, like he wasn't sure if it was a compliment or a gentle tease. That comment stayed with me. I continued, not because it was flattering, but because I felt seen, and not just as a student. There was a long pause. I should have interrupted. I could have laughed it off, changed the subject, excused myself, but I didn't. I just listened. William stepped a little closer. He wasn't threatening, quite the opposite. He was vulnerable in a way that caught me completely off guard. "You made me feel something I haven't felt in a long time," he said. "Like I can actually be understood, like I don't have to pretend." I sat back, swallowing the lump that had formed in my throat. I had no script for this moment. I had spent decades as a mentor, a guide, a listener. I was always the one with answers, the one with poise. But suddenly, I was just a woman. "William," I began, and I could hear Thiwi in my own voice. He held up his chin gently, respectfully. "I'm not asking for anything," he said quickly. "I just needed you to know." I needed to say it out loud at least once before the semester ended. You don't have to respond. I didn't want to walk away and regret never telling you. My lips parted, but I didn't speak. There are moments in life when silence feels heavier than any words. An in-thick classroom with the fading light casting long shadows across the whiteboard. I felt the truth of what had settled between us. Not uncomfortable, not inappropriate, just honest. He finally smiled, a soft, sad kind of smile, then stepped back. "Thank you for listening," he said. "That's all I needed." And with that, I turned and walked toward the door. But before he could open it, I found my voice. "Wait," he turned. And in that moment, one that I'll never forget, I saw him not as a student, but as Amen, and I had no idea what I was going to say next. Wait. I repeated, and it was just a surprise to hear my voice as he was. My hand hovered mid-air, unsure of whether to gesture him back in or wave it off. He paused, one hand still on the doorknob, the late afternoon sun from the hallway, casting a warm glow behind him like something out of a dream. He didn't speak. He made a dot, so I stood slowly, carefully. My body moved as if in slow motion, not from hesitation, but from the sheer gravity of what I was about to allow. "I'm not sure I know what I'm doing," I said with a soft smile, mostly to myself. He turned fully back toward me, the door clicking shut behind him with a finality that settled heavily in the room. "You don't have to know," he said. "Neither do I nodded, absorbing that dot, how strange it felt to not be the one with the answer. How strangely freeing. I've been teaching for almost 35 years. I began moving slowly around the desk, arms crossed loosely over my chest, half guarding my emotions. I've seen students come and go, eager and lost, brilliant and distracted, and some I remember, long after grades are posted. You, William, you've lingered in me mind. His eyes held mine. Not intentional, but open, present. It's not the age. I added before heckled say anything. It's never been about that. It's the way you listen, the way you look at people like they matter, like you're trying to see something deeper. That's rare, especially these days. He took a tentative step toward me and I didn't move back. There was no rush in the air, just tension. Soft magnetic tension that neither of us needed to name. "I never wanted to cross a line," he said, his voice lower now. "Not with you. You haven't," I replied. "But I think maybe I have." He shook his head gently. "No, you were just honest." There was a small silence after that, not awkward, but thick. With a neither of us knew how to untangle. I walked past him, moving to the window, and pulled the blinds open slightly. The campus outside was emptying, scattered students walking toward their cars, backpacks bouncing, laughter echoing in the distance. It felt like watching the world from inside a snow globe, separate, untouchable. I don't get seen this way very often anymore, I admitted, my fingers still holding the edge of the blind. Not as a woman, just as Professor Carter or worse. "Ma'am, it's like the world put me in a shelf the moment I crossed 60. You're not invisible to me," he said immediately firmly. I turned to face him, my breath catching slightly at how steady he looked. His hands were in his pockets now, his shoulders relaxed butalic. He was watching me, not waiting for anything, just watching, like my presence itself had value. That did something to me. "I spent years teaching about connection," I said, walking slowly back toward him. Literature, poetry, philosophy, all of it about people searching for someone who gets them. And yet I never really thought I'd still be part of that search. "You are," he sighed, a little closer now, a step just short of him. My eyes traced the line of his jaw, the tension at the corner of his mouth. He was nervous despite how calm he looked. I could feel it in the way he shifted his weight and a slight tightness in his shoulders. "I'm not afraid of what you said earlier," I whispered, "but I am afraid of what it could mean if I answer." "I'm not asking you to answer anything," he replied, his voice low and full off something that sounded dangerously like her. And just here, there's a strange comfort in being seen without having to explain yourself. In that moment, William wasn't a student. He wasn't a professor. We weren't even people bound by rules or years or roles. We were just two souls briefly intersecting. In a way that neither of us expected, I reached out, brushing my hand across desk for support. It felt like Aleph line, something to tether me to reality. I don't think I've let anyone in like this, I murmured more to myself than him. Then maybe it's time, he said, even if it's just for this moment. I looked at him for a long time, weighing every risk, every ounce of logic that told me to keep my distance. And yet all I could feel was the warmth between us, the slow-blooming trust, the tender, unexpected gravity of something real. My hand found his gently. No rush, no pressure. He didn't pull away. His fingers curled softly around mine, not possessively, not boldly, just enough to say, I see you. And for the first time in a very long while, I allowed myself to be seen. That night, I walked home in silence. The early evening breeze was warm, fragrant, with late spring blooms. The streets were quiet, my heels clicking against the pavement as I tried to process what had happened. Nothing happened. And yet everything had changed, not because of a confession, but because someone looked into the very heart of me and didn't flinch. I didn't sleep much. My mind played it all again and again. The way his eyes lingered, the gentleness in his words, the stillness between us. And when a question kept rising through the silence of my room, what do I do next? The next morning, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror, brushing my silver street hair with a kind of care I hadn't bothered with in years. I don't know what came over me, but everything felt different. My skin still held the memory of his touch. Soft, fleeting, but grounding. I wasn't even sure if anything would happen next, but I felt it. The change, like something inside me, had quietly shifted direction. The halls of campus felt oddly unfamiliar that day. It was as if I had entered a world where everything looked the same, but felt complete line. Students wandered past me, talking, laughing, headphones in, their lives moving forward. I smiled politely at a few former students who nodded in recognition, but my mind wasn't in that world anymore. It was still in that quiet room with William, wrapped in the warmth of his voice, that look in his eyes. I hadn't expected to see him again so soon, but just after lunch, I stepped into my office, and there he was, sitting in that air across from my desk, like I belonged there, calm, composed, and yet something in his face told me he wasn't sure he should be. You left the door unlocked, he said gently. I suppose I did, I replied, trying not to smile too much. He stood, his tall frame casting ashdow across my desk. There was hostleness to him, a quiet confidence, but I could tell he was waiting to see how I'd receive him. Would I pretend nothing happened? Would I bet professional again? Push him back into the role of student? I closed the door behind me slowly, deliberately. It's just us now, I said. And he let out the softest breath, like he'd been holding it since the second I walked in. I didn't know if I should come, he said, stepping a little closer. I'm glad you did. I hadn't planned to say that. I hadn't planned anything, but in that moment, I realized I didn't want to return to how things were before. I didn't want to stuff all of that quiet, delicate emotion back into the vault of what ifs. I wanted to understand what this was, even if it scared me. He moved to the window, glancing out at the quad, and I watched him for a moment. There was something old-fashioned about the way he held himself, hands behind his back, posture straight, like someone raised to represent in every moment. I liked that last night, he began, still facing the window. I kept thinking, did I ruin something? No, I answered firmly. Had earned. I don't regret anything you said, I continued. I don't regret VC Lens either. It told me more than words ever could. He stepped toward me, and now he was close enough that I could smell the faintest trace of cedar and something warm beneath it. Not koan, something real, something him. There's something about you, he said quietly. I've never felt this way before, not like this. I looked up at him, heart beating in my throat. You don't have to explain it, William, but I want to, he insisted. His voice trembling slightly with emotion. It's not just attraction. It's not some fantasy. It's the way you carry yourself, the way you look at people, the way you made me feel when I didn't even know I needed to be seen. His words hung in the room like dust in sunlight. I didn't try to answer them right away. I let them settle, breathing in the weight of what he had just shared. You make me feel alive again, I whispered, and that teraphisma. He didn't try to fix the fear. Hadn't rushed in with promises or declarations. He just stepped close enough for me to feel the warmth of his body and said, let me walk beside you, that's all. We didn't touch. Not yet, but there was something deeper happening in that moment. The kind of connection that doesn't need physical confirmation to feel real. I realized then that my entire world had been reshaped in a span of days. I wasn't craving youth. I wasn't trying to relive a past. I was stepping into a future I hadn't known was possible. We sat on the little couch in my office, the one no student ever used unless they were falling apart. And yet here we were side by side, both piecing something together that neither of us had expected to find. He asked questions, real ones, about my life, my past, my favorite books. The story behind the small photograph on my shelf, a younger version of me holding Annie Byrne, my daughter now grown and living across the country. He asked with genuine interest, not as a way to win favor, but because he cared. It had been years since someone asked me questions like that. Years since someone looked at me as someone to discover, not just someone to learn from. I found myself laughing. More than once, I couldn't remember the last time I laughed that way. Full, unguarded, fecund of laughter that shakes loose all parts of you that have been dormant. The afternoon light began to fade, casting shadows through the blinds. I hadn't even noticed the time. We'd been talking for hours, lost in something that didn't have a name yet. It should go, he said eventually, his voice softer now. But can I see you again outside of this? I paused, not out of doubt, but to really feel the moment. Yes, I said, but not as professor and student. He nodded. Agreed. I stood to walk him out, and this time when our hands touched, we didn't let go right away. It was simple. No drama, just two people holding on. After he left, I sat back down on the couch and closed my eyes. I didn't know where this would lead. I didn't even know if it would last. But I did know this. For the first time in a long, long time, I felt like the story of my life wasn't over. Something new was beginning, and I wasn't afraid to turn the page. The days that followed passed like chapters in a book. I didn't want to end. William and I met again. Not on campus, not in my office, but in a quiet corner of a little bookstore cafe just outside town. It was one of those places with mismatched chairs, worn wooden floors, and a cord menu that never really changed. We sat tucked away in the back where the scent of old books blended with the rich aroma of coffee, and Therold felt far away. He was already there when I arrived, waiting with 2 mugs and that same patient, steady look in his eyes. He stood when he saw me as if it were instinct. No one does that anymore. You remembered I take it with cream? I said, surprised. He smiled. Of course I did. We talked, not about what had happened, not right away. We talked about the small things, music, family, our first heartbreaks. He told me about his younger brother and how he used to walk him to school every morning when their mother worked double shifts. I told him about the summer I spent in Paris after my divorce, how I thought it would heal me, but instead just left me more aware of my solitude. But the space between us had changed. weren't cautiously circling something anymore. We were in it. At one point, he reached across the table and lightly brushed a crumb off my lip with the pad off his thumb. It was the smallest gesture, quick, innocent, but I felt it like a spark up my spine. That night, he walked me to my car. It was late. The kaffa had emptied out, the street quiet. A soft breeze tugged at the hem of my coat, and I watched as he hesitated by the passenger side, unsure. "You want to say something?" I said, leaning back against the door. "I do," he admitted. "But I don't want to ruin the pace we found." "Say it anyway." He stepped closer. "I don't want this taupe temporary." The wind moved my hair across my cheek. I didn't brush it away. "I don't either," I said. "But I'm afraid of what that means." He nodded, letting the silence settle. Then, with the softest voice, he asked, "Can I kiss you?" I didn't answer with words. I leaned in, letting my hand rest gently on the back of his neck as I closed the space between us. The kiss was soft, slow, not hungry or rushed. It was careful, curious, and in that one moment I felt more seen, more wanted, more known than I had in years. We didn't speak after, wouldn't need to. Our hands lingered in parting, and when I watched him walk away, I felt something aching but beautiful, like the closing line of a poem you didn't realize you needed. Back home, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror again. The same silver-streaked hair, fearsome lines around my eyes. But I saw someone different, someone alive, someone unburdened. For the first time, I wasn't afraid of the years behind me, and I wasn't afraid of the ones ahead. William and I continued to see each other quietly, respectfully outside the firm of the classroom and all its rules. He was careful with me, never possessive, never demanding, just present. There was something so rare in that, a kind of masculine tenderness that held no expectations, only space. We took walks. We shared books. We stayed up late talking about things that had nothing and everything to do with us. It wasn't about age. It wasn't about power. It was about two people in very different chapters of life meeting at the intersection of timing, truth, and quiet courage. One evening, sitting on the porch of my house with a blanket over our laps and a bottle of wine between us, he turned home and said, "You make me want to grow older." I looked at him, eyes stinging. "You make me feel like it's worth it," I whispered back. There's something deeply human about being chosen. Not just by your years, your scars, your history, but because of them. He didn't want a polished version of me. He wanted the woman I was when I wasn't pretending to be anything else. That realization, that kind of love, it doesn't shout. It whispers. It lingers. It stays. I don't know what tomorrow looks like. Maybe that's the beauty of it. There's no map for what we found. No label neat now to fit us into someone else's idea of right. But what I do know is this. He asked to stay after the lecture, and what he gave was something I never knew I needed. Not a confession, not a kiss, not even a promise. He gave me the chance to feel again, to love, not in spite of time, but through it.